Oh, wait, I could probably pull up actual OBS so I can
OBS.
see what we're doing. There we go.
There it is.
Welcome, everybody, back to part 2 of 4. The Salt of the Streets podcast,
Yes.
episode 124. If you are just joining us, then it's Wednesday next week, which means we just finished up with part 1 of 4, and you should go back if you haven't seen that yet. Go back. We released it on Monday right here on the channel, so go get you some part 1 of 4. We talked lots of pop culture and all sorts of fun stuff, and I talked a little bit about hunting, and I got really passionate for a minute, and then we talked about some local legislation, and yeah. So if you haven't seen that yet, go back and check that out, and get excited because we're going down over into, I don't know, we're going east to Russia and Ukraine.
You can find all of that over on our YouTube at Salt of the Streets. We also have our Instagram.com/Salt of the Streets. We have the Facebook.
I should just leave it. You're the professional here.
No, this is good. The mixture is good. You've been setting me up really well, so it's really good. Obviously,
good
our
practice.
Patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. If you want to go there and help us make more better content, you can find all this on saltofthestreets.com, including our personal social media. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both of those things.
Yee.
That is it. If you need a haircut, go to another Swell Blended. He'll be back in the next few weeks. If you need a skateboard, go down to Location Skate Shop. If you want to watch some video games, go to Lexi Kyle on Twitch. And if you need a cake over the next few weeks, find Leggings and Aprons on Instagram. Yeah, let's try some of that shit out.
Yee.
What comes next is inevitable. This
What
is why
comes
we shouldn't care about the elites. I love it.
God, before we dive into it, I don't want to remark on the content of it, but what a solid convo having with the brothers Guetta
Yeah.
over the last couple days, man. On
Those
Signal,
cats are smart, dude.
they are. I really,
are
really
smart.
enjoy every conversation we have with them.
I would love to sit down with them. We'll just try and get them both over the. I wish that they lived together
them on
because I don't want to do
Discord or something.
two different,
Yeah, we
two
need the
different
brothers Guetta.
streams. Yeah. I mean, like, because you can even Skype two people at one time from a different location,
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want like a three-way Skype podcast. I think that would be. People do it all the time.
Yeah, it might be a little difficult in with people stepping on each other, the slight
Right.
delays and stuff like that.
Skype
That would
podcasts
might be.
themselves are not my preference.
No, they're not the greatest, but
Yes.
we do pretty well with one-on-ones, as long as everybody's got decent internet. But
Yes.
with them Guetta boys, I don't know how that situation is, because
I'm not
every
sure.
time we've done it with Zeke, it's just been through like a phone call
Over the phone,
just an
yeah.
audio deal.
I don't know, and I don't know where his brother lives. I've
Yeah,
never met
yeah.
his brother before, so
I haven't met
Only
either of
through-
them, which is really
yeah.
fun.
Zeke, I went to school. I think we started going to school together in the 7th grade. So 7th through high school, we went to school together. So I spent every day with them for 6 years.
Yeah, how age difference?
Nope, we're in the same grade. Yep,
Oh,
we're in the
yeah.
same. Yeah, so we both graduated
That's dope.
2013. We're both.
2013.
Yep.
Bunch of fucking
Yep.
young folks. Bro, I cleaned out my pipe last night. Or not last night.
Was it
like
disgusting?
earlier this week. It was real bad.
I'm sure.
It was real bad.
I'm
It's
sure.
been a while. I didn't realize it. The chunk of shit that you can pull out of a little pipe like that. And go, oh, that's why it hasn't been. It's been like sucking it through a straw.
Yes.
Ay, ay, ay.
So in this part 2, our topic is Russia and Ukraine, right?
Mhm.
So we're going to I have some cards here. We can go just kind of like a rough timeline, and we'll hit some major events, and then we'll come back to them, and we'll discuss them after we run through the timeline, just
I
kind
like
of get
it.
everybody got up.
Yeah, we got 2 weeks of a lot of things that happened.
Exactly, yeah. So right after we did the show last time, the weekend of the 5th to the 7th, multiple days in a row of Russian forces shelling evacuation routes after agreeing on ceasefires. There's to be completely objective about it, because that's what this is right now. There is some question over. The Russians definitely bombed the routes, but there's question over who it was that broke the ceasefire. There's a lot
Yeah.
of militias out there. There's individuals. There's very unorganized fighting. It's chaos. We'll talk later about some reporters that were killed, some American reporters, and they were saying when they're there is no front line. There is not a defined front line of this is where the fighting starts and this is where it stops.
Yep.
There's just an area in which people are fighting.
Yep.
So
It's guerrilla warfare, really.
it's guerrilla warfare, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's yeah.
Yeah, there's no real front lines. What has essentially happened since the invasion is populations have coalesced, have concentrated around big cities
Yeah.
and big towns, and then now that's where most of the fighting is occurring, is in and around these areas. And, obviously with guerrilla warfare tactics and things like that, it's happening all over the place because that's how guerrilla warfare works. So.
Right.
But yeah, there's really no. I watched the video. It's bad. I've become that dude that I don't like. I've been watching a lot of these like head cam videos and things like that on YouTube of people in firefights. I saw some dude get shot in the chest the other day.
Yeah.
He had body armor and ended up being fine, but it's a fucking foxhole in the middle of the woods, and it's just fire everywhere.
Right. And that's.
And you don't even know if that stuff's real or not, honestly, but.
It's important to remember that the Ukraine is largely, not all, but largely agricultural.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about they're the breadbasket of the world. So they're growing an insane amount of wheat and different agricultural products. So that is happening. There's a huge amount of small villages, little tiny towns with a few houses in them, some people. Like that is happening all over the place. And so if the messaging is difficult to get out, and so even if you don't know that there's a ceasefire, but the ceasefire is happening, you know, and then you take shots, that's going to end the ceasefire. So,
especially you're sitting there and you think these people are coming here to kill you.
Right.
And you have no idea what's going on. I mean, you heard stuff like that a ton about in World War I and World War II when there were ceasefires and peace treaties and things like this. People don't know sometimes the fighting is over, the war is over.
The Japanese dudes hiding in the forest deep in
Dude.
the 90s, shit like
Yes.
that, because they were like, no, unless the emperor or my general tells me that I'm not fucking leaving.
Yep.
That type of shit happens everywhere.
Dan Carlin's last series of hardcore history, the very first part of I think it's called something in the East, Supernova in the East. He talks for like an hour about like all the last Japanese soldiers that were found in like the mid to late 90s, still fighting World War II, thinking it's still going on. Insane. It just goes to show you, how do you expect to get the word to somebody in a foxhole in the middle of a guerrilla war in Central Europe? They don't know what's going on.
No,
it's
they just
fog of war,
are
man.
trying to defend themselves.
Yep.
There was some talk around this time of EU trying to get some fighter jets over to Ukraine, right?
Yes.
And so at first it was just like a direct, or Poland wanted to do it. Poland originally brought it up, and they were going to send some fighter jets over, and then they didn't want to send them directly, and America was supporting the idea, and so America said, oh, you guys should definitely do that. Like, that's totally fine. Poland said, well, we don't want to do it, but we'll send them to Ramstein Air Base, which is an American air base in Germany, and you guys can then send it to Poland. And America was like, oh, fuck you guys. We're absolutely not doing that. So this whole deal with the airplanes fell apart, but it was around this time that the Polish fighter jets, the early report of the Polish fighter jets were denied. The U.S. is now working working to get Polish jets to Ukraine with NATO. There was at this time concerns about sending weapons that are too complicated for Ukrainians to use, technological capabilities and things like that. There was a Close the Skies protest in Chicago, like a parade of people walking through the streets. Close the skies.
Oh, a pro-war protest. Interesting.
Yes, a pro-war protest in the middle of Chicago. Yes. Yeah, calls for U.S. lawmakers to stop import of Russian crude and petroleum products and all energy. And then on the 8th, the U.S. Decided they were going to end oil imports from Russia. Talks were happening at the time with Iran. Reports of talks with Iran and Venezuela about potentially opening up oil trades with them. Nuclear talks with Iran have also been ongoing. Oil delays means dropping sanctions on Iran, or oil deals means dropping sanctions on Iran, obviously. Jen Psaki says when she was asked on the 10th about meeting with Venezuela, she said that the U.S. doesn't recognize Maduro as the leader over there, but we met with him over U.S. detainees and not oil. There was, we were talking about oil. We were just talking about the detainees that were released. On the
we don't
9th,
recognize him.
Russian global credit rating was downgraded to junk status and has happened multiple times through different sectors. And that's due to the sanctions, right? There's an enormous list of sanctions that we have, from individuals to their central bank to many of their other banks. There are the institutions that the Russians owe money to are now demanding that they pay their debts in dollars. And whether that, I don't remember that was original stipulation or that's what they're saying now. Either way, Russia doesn't have access to that amount of dollars. They said, we're going to pay our debts in rubles. Their debtors have said, absolutely not. You cannot pay it in rubles. It has to be paid in American dollars. If they miss their deadline, they have a 30-day... Fucking money is so stupid. It doesn't make any sense. They're like, oh, it looks really bad when countries lose their credit rating or miss their debt payments.
Whatever.
None of this is real anyway. None of this is real. You're talking about billions and billions of dollars that Russia's paying back in dollars, rubles. None of this makes any sense. And not because, like, it's so confusing, but because it's fucking stupid. That is stupid. Either way,
Yep.
this is the world that we live in. So if Russia misses their payment date, then they have a 30-day grace period in which to make their payments in dollars, or else they're going to go into default and everything's going to be terrible, I guess. There's supposedly 7% contraction of their economy, their GDP this year. So we'll see what happens with that. On the 9th, Venezuela released 2 U.S. detainees that fucking breaking points, right? I almost guarantee that they support Juan Guaido at the time, right? I'm sure they're like, oh, this is what the people want and all this shit. And now they're talking about how the U.S. is over there. Oh, they're war making. They're fucking around with things. And, and they tried to support a military coup and all this shit. Fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
That's the problem with the left's take on foreign policy.
Bullshit.
You can never carry through because it's just too complex. Too complex. You can't have an ethical stance like that, necessarily, a moral stance.
It was on that same day that Venezuela released the 2 detainees that Saudi Arabia and the UAE both declined not only phone calls but meetings with Joe Biden, and they said they were going to maintain standard production. They literally declined phone calls with the president of the United States, supposed to be the most powerful man on the planet, and they declined to even take his fucking phone call.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
On the 10th, Russia bombed a hospital. The Russian Federation Army bombed a hospital that supposedly was a maternity hospital. Lots of people that died. The UAE said that day that it was going to push OPEC to produce more oil after the Russian oil blockage, because there's all this going on, with the Russian oil supply now.
But we don't call it an embargo because embargoes start wars.
It's a blockage.
Yeah.
It's a blockage.
Yeah. It's totally different.
On the 11th, there was a new slate of sanctions leveled. Again, further sanctions. On the 13th, and this is when I wrote down, this is when I wrote down in the corner, Axios wants war.
Yeah.
On the corner, in this card on the 13th, I said, Axios wants war. And it was just the tone of the reporting. They're talking about, we've seen this from Joe Biden. We saw sanctions. But we haven't seen this, literally what they said. We haven't seen the no-fly zone that Volodymyr Zelensky has been asking for. And it wasn't like... That's exactly it. We haven't seen, Isn't it weird that we haven't seen this? The inflection on it, like it should be expected. Like this is the way to go.
Yep.
Right?
And you had sent me that morning and you were like, dude, you have to listen to this. Axios wants war. And I was like, and that was it. It was clean, right? So I went into it. I didn't ask why or anything like that. And that's the exact thing I picked up on. Because it wasn't the actual words that were said. It was how it was said. It's like,
yes,
you fuckers are thirsty, aren't you? Yeah. It was scary.
And it was a few days later that it got really, really bad. And when I text you again, I was like, they're warmongering. Like this is straight up warmongering.
Yep.
And we'll get to that.
Like, oh wait till my commentary, folks.
Yeah. This is this is on the 13th. Russian airstrike on Ukrainian military training center. 35 people killed. This was like 10, 12 miles from the Polish border. So this obviously people were all up in arms. They're like, oh, that's right next to an EU country. And what are we going to do? Breaking points. They're fucking shitting on the EU leaders that are going to go to Ukraine. They're like, this was very stupid. If something happens to you, then America gets run into a war. This was very irresponsible. It's very dangerous. They're just clutching their pearls that people are having the fucking balls to try and go to Ukraine and go and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is like, oh, I'm definitely not going to go there. I would not do that. We're not even going to send Kamala Harris. We're going to send her into an adjoining country with the Ukraine, into Poland. And we're not even going to send Kamala. Fuck off. Mm-hmm. I'm so...
Not to mention, that did not go so well.
Let me put this stake down right now. I don't want war with Russia. That's a terrible idea. It's the last thing that country needs. But I'm so sick of the
pearl clutching.
The pearl clutching and the weakness and the fear that is being exuded from people. They're like, oh, we can't anything to do with that. Nothing. Fuck off. I'm sick of that. I'm not for, I don't know, maybe it's the last strands of like my deep patriotism to the state, or whatever. But I'm just tired of this putting out the message that America is weak and scared and we just don't know what to do. There's nothing we can do and we're weak and scared and that's just it. We're waiting to see and hoping that Vladimir Putin makes the right decisions and that he gives a fuck about what anybody else thinks, even though he's proven by this point that he doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of that. I'm very tired of that.
It really doesn't make sense after a while because the stance becomes, well, we're aghast that this is happening. This is so terrible. How can this be happening? Well, it is. And unless somehow you stop it, it's going to continue to happen.
Right.
So this whole, a pox on you, Russia. Putin is bad. The world, the global community is going to look down on you for this. We're going to sanction you. I don't care. I have China. I got my homie. And we're gonna trade in the Chinese yen or whatever
We have
it is
more than an alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you're going to have to stop it if you want to stop it. Otherwise he's not going to stop. Right now, the only thing that is stopping him is the actual fighting that's happening on the ground with Ukraine.
Right.
And obviously we have our own kind of opinions and thoughts on that too, but that's what's stopping him right now is like the fighting. I don't think the sanctions and all the things are really doing anything. If you want to take the moral stance and say this is truly bad, you need to do something about it.
Right.
Or we should have a different conversation.
And from the show, so it may have been in the same episode that Sagar was expressing that he was upset that when Donald Trump was on the Milk Boys podcast, they called him Donald and didn't call him President Trump, right? It's like, that made me very irritated. He didn't like that. It's disrespectful, right?
He's trying to act like a conservative again.
But then when they're talking about the leaders of Poland and like 2 other countries that went to Ukraine, like I think you could have done that over Zoom. Okay, so you could have done it over Zoom because it delivers the same exact message, right? If you have a soldier walk around with a camera to show me what I can see on Zoom, as opposed to if I go there myself as the leader of another sovereign country in the EU, showing you I support you, we stand with you, along with the dollars that we are giving you, I am here to show you that I stand with you. That messaging doesn't matter at all. No. That doesn't matter. That's not lost through Zoom, but a pox on the Nelk Boys because they're just the bastion of conservatism and patriotism. A pox on them for not calling Donald Trump President Trump. A pox on you. What are we doing? Honestly.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I will say this. Up until that controversy, I guess, happened, I've never heard the Milk Boys.
The Nelk Boys.
Nelk Boys.
Nelk Boys.
I'm going to call them Milky, just like Brad Milky on ABC.
I had heard of them. Just because I knew that they were like YouTube guys, but I don't know anything about them. I don't know.
All we know is they're the type of podcast that Donald Trump will show up on, apparently.
I've heard Tim Dillon talk about them, and that's how I know who they are. So YouTube
Tim
guys,
Dillon.
I've heard the phrase full send, and that's like apparently where that came from. Apparently the Nelk Boys are the ones that the full send is from the Nelk Boys.
Okay.
Yes. So
full send.
I only even saw a picture of them when the screenshots of their podcast with Donald Trump were pulled down. And I'm like, oh, these are the Nelk Boys. Yes.
I got to Google them. So.
I gotta find out. Yeah, so I don't know. So we'll continue on now that we've taken this little break here. It was also on the 13th that Russia had asked China for aid in the Ukraine, undefined aid. They just asked for aid. Eventually they asked for more specific. They asked for like defense and weaponry and things like that they don't necessarily. There are suspicions or whatever assumptions they don't necessarily need that equipment, but they're asking China for it just to make it a stronger alliance because they're giving them military equipment. There was also the day Jake Sullivan said that the U.S. will not allow other nations to supplement Russia through sanctions, right? The U.S. won't allow. We don't want to play police. We don't want to be the babysitter for the whole world, but we're going to tell China straight up, we are not going to allow any other nation to trade with Russia. But we don't want to patrol the world. We don't want to police the whole world, but we're going to tell a sovereign nation what they can and can't do with their dollars.
And not just any nation. That's China?
China.
I mean, and Xi's going like, yeah, okay, yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah, you could tell me that. That's fine. Sure. We'll see how well this goes for you.
This is idiocy. This is idiocy and warmongering disguised as peacemaking. And it's frustrating to watch, and it's difficult to be gaslit on a near daily basis by an administration. Fucking talking to Jordan's dad last night, right? He's talking about the examples he gave was during the Syrian war. And he said he's sitting in a base watching TV, watching Hillary Clinton say there are no U.S. troops in Syria. And he says,
I'm here.
I'm in Syria right now. So as we sit, and as I've said for 2 episodes now, as we sit and watch the federal government, the United States government tell you and swear up and down, there are no United States boots on the ground there. Not even advisors. We don't even have advisors on the ground in Ukraine. In Poland, maybe, so that they can oversee the distribution of the aid. We don't have American boots on the ground there, and we're not going to put American boots on the ground there. Shut the fuck up. You are lying. You are lying to the American people actively right now. And when American soldiers are dead, what are you going to do? you're going to send more over there and break this same lie that you're telling right now. I can't stand it. I cannot stand it. The idiocy. It's lies. It's not even gaslighting. It is outright lies, and people believe it. They push forward with it. Like, oh, we would never do that. We don't have American boots on the ground there. We're just sending, defensive weapons over there. That's all that we're doing. That's all we would never do anything like that.
Do we remember during the time period at which Donald Trump was looking at withholding aid Congress had already allocated to Ukraine? You remember that? And then there were, if I recall correctly, there were U.S. Congress people over in Ukraine. It might have some, I believe, might have taken a little bit of fire or something like that. I remember something about that 4 or 5 years ago during the Donald Trump presidency when they were over there to kind of, and we obviously had U.S. military folks on the ground there, because I remember seeing them on fucking television with the trucks, and they were talking about the weapons and all this, because Donald Trump was bad and he was trying to stop these weapons from coming in here, and they're fighting against Belarus and Russia and all this stuff. And I remember that was not that long ago.
Not now, though. We pulled all those guys out.
Yeah, we obviously must have pulled everybody out.
Oh, yeah.
Because things have changed over there greatly. They have gotten better, I should say. They've obviously changed for the worst, but they didn't get any better. Why would we have pulled the troops out since then? It doesn't make any sense. Of course there's fucking troops there. There's troops in almost every single country around the world.
It's idiocy. It's lies.
Yes, it is. And it's for stupid people. Stupid people that don't remember fucking a year ago or 2 years ago when we were there already. We saw this shit and it didn't just stop.
They did not bring them home. They rotated them out with a new battalion.
Exactly.
Because that's how it works.
Yes. I don't want to get
if we were withdrawing all troops from Ukraine, we would have heard about it.
Yeah.
We would have heard about it.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that there are any American soldiers in the nation of Afghanistan right now?
Oh, no, never.
Of course not. Why would there be?
We don't need there to be.
We pulled them out, right?
All of
They're
them.
not in Afghanistan.
There's no American citizens there. There's no servicemen there.
Nope. No. Not a bunch of guys in badass uniforms with the long-ass beards. None of them. None of them.
Nope. On the 13th, this was also when the U.S. reporters were shot and the cameraman was killed. There were 2 different reporters that were killed, one that was shot, Fox News reporters.
I actually don't remember this.
Yes. In Ukraine, they were traveling through the city, maybe being led by someone, and to my recollection, they took sniper fire through their car. And
I might have vaguely...
it's kind of up in the air who shot at them, because there's also been, stories, quote unquote, because it's first person accounts. I've some videos and stuff like that, but again, they're just videos. I'm not saying that they're real. American servicemen saying that people who volunteered to go and fight, which, as we said, they then are subject to the Ukrainian government, and they're given shit-ass weapons. They're given shit-ass weapons and no ammunition, and when they're too scared to go out with that, the Ukrainian soldiers say, "Get the fuck out of here, then, or we're going to shoot you."
Yep.
So again, I support the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people are not perfect people. They are not totally innocent in this entire scenario, right? To act as though we should just totally and unquestionably support Ukraine is stupid. That's a dumbass thing to say.
Dude, it would be the equivalent of if we had a particular army battalion that was nothing but KKK members.
Yes.
Like, literally, they have a battalion of Nazis.
Special forces.
Majid Nuaz talks about this all the time. He's very on this. And it is not unreal.
Yeah.
That does exist. They are literal. There is a battalion of literal Nazis that are in the regular pay and regular service of the Ukrainian army. They're called the Azov
battalion.
But yes, that's not wrong.
Yeah. On the 14th, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, he had a 7-hour tense meeting with the Chinese officials over financing support for Russia. On the 15th we found out that Zelensky was going to appeal to the United States Congress. 15th was the day that he appealed to Canadian Parliament, I believe, and he called Justin Trudeau Justin. He just called him Justin. I wonder how Sagar feels about that. I'm just calling him Justin.
It's highly inappropriate.
Is it still inappropriate because he's the president of the Ukraine, or is it appropriate, or is it not? I don't know. Nope. I'm interested. Justin. Does it matter because he's not president? Is like, does it because he's prime minister? Does it matter?
Yeah,
Is it
right.
because it's not America? Is that a racist thing? Because it doesn't matter if it's Canada or Ukraine? That seems weird.
Maybe he knows that
Stupid
Justin
ass thing to
Trudeau has a part-time job doing blackface, so he doesn't want to give him the respect of calling him prime minister. He just wants to call him Justin.
Justin.
That seems real apt for Ukraine.
Yes. Let's see. U.S. officials warn of possible chemical weapons attacks on part of the Russians. We are going to get into this a little bit later for sure. I have some really good articles here, some good reporting. That
I'm trying to be
being
good, just so
completely
the audience
ignored.
knows I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to withhold my comments during the
Yes.
timeline, and I'm writing notes to come back to.
Yeah, exactly. See. Oh, on ABC Start here, they were talking to a U.S. volunteer, a doctor, and said, "What's happening to Americans in Kiev? Oh, what happens to Americans there if Kiev gets worse?" Exactly. What are we going to do if there are Americans there? We're going to be fucked. You're going to send more Americans
They're going to
there.
die.
Yes.
That's what's going to
You're
happen.
going to send more Americans there. You're going to send troops there, just like you're saying you're not doing. It's fucking stupid. The UK sanctioned more Russian people, some more oligarchs on the 16th. That was the day on the 15th. I'm sorry, it was a little bit earlier than that. It was the 13th that we sent $200 million of arms and equipment to Ukraine. And then on the 16th, there was some type of announcement that Biden was expected to send $1 billion in aid to Ukraine, which is not from the initial spending package that was already signed. That was $16 billion. The EU and the U.S. increased sanctions for banks and individuals. There's a 35-hour curfew in place in Kiev because the bombing was getting so intense. Zelensky addressed Congress that day, and it was later that day that it was $800 million that was actually sent in aid. So that was $1 billion in a week on top of the $16.5 billion that we already sent in spending to Ukraine in military and humanitarian aid. But we're definitely not at war. 17th, Russia has been accused of bombing an occupied theater. They deny the allegations, obviously. It was a missile that dropped on a theater that had fucking children on the outside. Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it was one of those. They say that you could see children from space, like from satellite imagery. That was the whole concept.
Biden was heard calling Putin a war criminal. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, obviously. Putin acknowledges financial troubles they're having and is saying, we're going to have to figure some shit out. On the 18th, Biden met with Xi Jinping regarding real support for a Russian war effort, like financial support. And I have not personally seen anything come out of that yet, other than it was a tense conversation and strong words were had, but no substantive details to come out of that. The International Criminal Court is expected to charge Russian officials with war crimes. Anthony Blinken said that he agreed with that and with Biden when he called him a war criminal, and is said to be collecting evidence for the International Criminal Trial. The Wall Street Journal, What's News, said that when you're talking, and this was in regards to war crimes, they were saying that militia fighting blurs lines because war crimes often, they refer to civilians, obviously, a lot of that type of stuff. And so when there are militias and there are civilians fighting, there's some blurred lines here and things like that. It makes it difficult to decide. Russia claims that civilian buildings have been used for military operations, and so that's part of why they were doing what they're doing.
It's the old Gaza Strip conflict.
Yes.
That's the same type of thing we always talk about. It's easy to grade the lines that way.
Let's see. That's just the axios part, so I will read that. On the 18th, Russia is seeking help from its adversary. Russia is seeking help from China. They said that this is when they were more specific about their needing military equipment and stuff like that. And this is from ABC Start here, right? Their coverage on it was so fucking terrible. They said that Russia seeking help from its adversary, China, was difficult for them to comprehend. And I have an article here.
Say that one more time.
Yes.
Russia seeking help from their adversary, China. That's nonsensical. That's not real.
No.
That's not that. China and Russia are not adversaries.
No. And I have an article here that even outlines that, and I'm just trying to find. I got fucked on my computer.
Pay loose attention for any period of time over the last 10 years, and you will know that there is not an adversarial relationship between Russia and China. Like, I don't understand how anybody who attempts to have a conversation around foreign policy can say that China and Russia are adversaries on the world stage. That makes zero sense at all. They're actually the only two the superpowers that are like-minded compared to the rest of the world superpowers.
Yes.
Interesting. But they're adversaries, according
Yeah.
to fucking Milky. Was that on Milky? Start here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Brad Milky.
I lost this article, so I'm just trying to find it now.
Ba-ba-ba.
I'm sorry about this.
That's okay. That's okay. We can look at my pretty face for a little while.
Yeah, it's just an article, and this is what it is, where China said that their ties are deeper than military connections, is what they said, or deeper than financial.
Yeah, no, they're ethical. They're moral.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I'm sorry. This is. Yeah, I got fucked with my articles before this started. I had to
Yeah,
start my-
like
restart my
right
computer.
before the show, you were just trying to wake up your laptop, man. You
Yeah,
got
and it
here,
just
and all of a sudden
went
it's like,
in.
let's open it, and it's like, I'm not gonna work for you. I know I'm your brand new laptop, but fuck you. You can re-pull up all your articles that you had.
Yeah.
I had a slight panic attack this morning because I also I do that before every show. Is I pull up all my articles, I pull up all that stuff, and I leave it in a separate window on one of my screens. And then I set the sleep mode on my computer to don't shut off, and I keep it on all night before the show because I'm fucking paranoid about losing all my tabs.
Right.
And then this is also me vamping right now. You don't have to actually listen to me, by the way.
No, I'm listening.
But yeah, I don't do that. And I walked in here this morning and I turned the studio lights on and I'm getting ready and I go over to my computer and it's black. And I'm going, oh shit, I forgot to set it, put it off sleep mode. Luckily, I had bookmarked all my tabs and I spent, 15 minutes going through pulling all of them back up. It's a pain in the dick.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So this article is from Tuesday. I finally found it.
Perfect
right?
timing.
Still, Beijing does not have a long. This is an MSN article. Do you want me to send this to you? It's just for a second.
Sure.
Before the invasion, Beijing and Moscow announced a no-limit strategic partnership. They said was intended to counter U.S. influence. China's position has been to ultimately blame the U.S. and NATO's eastward expansion for the conflict. And on March 7th, its foreign minister Wang called Russia his country's most important strategic partner.
Yeah.
Quote, no matter how perilous the international landscape is, we will maintain our strategic focus and promote the development of a comprehensive China-Russia partnership in the new era. Okay, so how are we going to classify them as an adversary when this was just
Makes zero sense.
before the invasion?
Oh, it's an MSN article.
Yeah.
Huh,
This
dog.
this was just before the invasion. This article's from Tuesday.
That actually makes a lot of sense
And
considering.
while China's government has expressed concern over the conflict in Ukraine, it has refused to call it an invasion or condemn Russia, largely pushing Moscow's narrative of the war on its state news outlet. China and Putin have a clear interest in working together more closely. Holger Schmeidling, Schmeiding, chief economist at Berenberg Bank, wrote in an early March research note, China is happy to cause problems for the West and would not mind turning Russia gradually into its pliant junior partner. So what are we talking about? How are they possibly an adversary when they've just announced these things, right? And this is the coverage that was so weird about it. They then immediately start here, right? This ABC start here. They then immediately turned to saying, we're very confused by this. It doesn't make very much sense. And then they explained about how China needs food and energy, and Russia has a surplus of food and energy because no one will take it. So you've just said it doesn't make any sense why they would team up together, but then explained why they would team up together.
Because the things that you need, food and energy, when the world war breaks out and we start, we'll talk later about the teams that are being drawn, you want to make sure that there's a breadbasket that could feed your troops.
Yes.
And so you have an ally like Russia that has excess food.
And this starts to feed
This is tactical board gaming 101, dude. It doesn't take a fucking rocket science to understand this.
And this starts to feed into the theme of today of propaganda. This is propaganda.
Yes.
They are spinning it, that they're forming it. One of their very next sentences, this is a quote, China and Russia have joined forces essentially against democracy.
But they're adversaries.
But they're adversaries.
You just told me they're adversaries. I don't understand.
But now they've joined forces essentially against democracy, right? We're going to spin it that they're trying to topple democracy.
So
because every day is January 6th now.
Every day is January 6th. Is that the timeline?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, because I was going to say it's not because democracy attacks on democracy now.
Yep.
If Russia and China are going to join forces to attack democracy, that's code for New World Order. That's what that is. They're fighting against the New World Order, which to us in the West seems like a decent idea because it's liberal, it's Western values, supposedly. I mean, we can talk about the Marxist influences that kind of corrupt the whole fucking system, which kind of gives people like you and me a really bad spot because I'm going, well, I get it, China. I get it, Russia. You don't want to be a part of this fucked up club because neither do I. But yeah, they're attacking democracy. That's what it boils down to, and that's how you create the propaganda that can be easily sold to every single American out there, because every American, not every American, Americans in vast quantities believe that we are democracy, and democracy is the way, and that's the only way.
Yes.
If this was the Mandalorian, we'd say, this is the way.
This is the way. So let's see what I have here. The push for war is insane, and it doesn't seem to matter what the political leanings are. Axios, half of commentary, Russia, Zelensky, 3/4 of Congress and Senate for various reasons. They're talking about no-fly zones, jets, more aid, cyber attacks, assassinations. Lindsey Graham is calling for an assassination of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
All these, this is all propaganda. All of this is propaganda. And it started there, right? These are all further escalations of the war, and some of them are simply veiled as aid or as moral responsibility. We've heard a lot of the last 2 weeks, it's your patriotic duty to pay higher gas prices so that we can aid Ukraine. This is your patriotic duty, right? Mm-hmm. So it's grown quickly from there, and from simple things kind of like the Ghost of Kiev, and I don't want to diminish them because it's all propaganda no matter what, but they're relatively benign things like the Ghost of Kiev, Snake Island, things like that, right? And it then quickly turned into, and we're going to kind of go over some of these things. We'll just go over this list and we'll break it down a little bit. Dead journalists, right? Dead journalists is another thing that's it's propaganda, and it can be used as that, especially because they're like, oh, the Russians are attacking American journalists, even though it's still up in the air who actually shot at them, because we don't fucking know, right?
But if it's our journalists and they're dead and it's
Americans.
a war zone, so it's easy to say the Russians did this.
And to underline my point, right? I believe it was Breaking Points that evoked the name earlier this week of James Foley, who was a reporter that died in the Syrian war, which is what...
I was like, it sounds familiar.
It is really kind of the breaking point of when we got into that and when we involved ourselves in that. When we had American journalists there and one of them was killed in the fighting. His head was chopped off on a video, actually. He was taken captive and he was beheaded on a video.
That's what Noah Rothman's always about.
Yes.
You give one American journalism on TV getting their head cut off and you go to war.
James Foley.
Yep.
Yes.
That's how that works.
Yes.
That's the connection.
And so that's, what the fuck have I been saying this whole time? What have I been saying? This is what you get. This is my concern, right? And they're using it, like you said, as fuel to get us into that fucking war. Bombed theaters, this is a war crime. These things are war crimes. So I want to take a moment and I want to talk about this, right? Who defines what a war crime is, right? And
technically, it's the Hague.
In a legal sense, yes. The Hague, the International Criminal Court, the International Criminal Justice, whatever the fuck, right? Legally,
yes.
Those are the people that define what it is.
Pause button. Now, that alone, the International Criminal Court,
yes,
the Hague itself, this loose body of international legal scholars and minds and things like that come up with this concept of war crimes, and you can't do this during a time of war, you can't do that. You know what you can do during a time of war and what you can't do in a time of war? Anything you fucking can get away with. There's no such thing. This is part of the quote-unquote New World Order that Putin and, in general, Vladimir Putin and President Xi and people like Iran and things like that who have common interests together are fighting against. It's the fact that a group of nations that control, that even if it's 60-40, if they're the ones that control the globe overwhelmingly, then they're the ones to put in that system of international justice.
Right.
And now foreign citizens, sovereign citizens, whatever, of Russia or China are now subject to this legal body that you have no say in, you didn't want to be a part of, anything like that. You're totally divorced from, you don't believe in. And now we're sitting here talking about war crimes, and it gets our side of this conflict all frothed up and all worried about fucking war crimes this, war crimes that. War crimes happen every single day in war.
Right.
I don't care. War crimes, the idea of a war crime is essentially the same. You watch the movie The Patriot. You love the movie The Patriot. Mel Gibson is a very strong. The British General Cornwallis in that one, and he's very highfalutin. He's a rich British dude. All this
Right.
stuff. He has
Big old
He has
dogs.
expectations of officers in war and how warfare should be conducted, and it needs to be civilized. Officers, of course, need to be spared from the violence as much as possible because, I mean, we're only fine gentlemen here.
Right.
Those people come up with the concept of fucking war crimes. Mel Gibson, the American guerrillas that are fighting against this invasion from the empire of the United Kingdom, they're committing war crimes.
Right.
In Cornwallis's view, this is no different. We make the rules for what we decide are war crimes, and then we expect our enemies during wartime to obey those rules.
Right.
Are you high? Do you have any idea how insane that sounds?
Well, and to that point, let me posit this, right? What is the difference other than scale, which I feel is very easy to ignore,
It is.
between
It is
some
very
of the
easy.
shit that we have seen that's being directly blamed on Vladimir Putin,
Mm-hmm.
right? These missiles being dropped, people dying. What is the difference between that? And do you remember, not you, do you remember, America, when we were leaving Afghanistan, we had the withdrawal there, and we launched a missile that killed a man and his fucking family because we said we were pretty damn certain that he was a terrorist, and then come to find out that he worked for a fucking non-governmental organization?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between that and this?
That's actually technically a war crime.
Oh, so there is no difference then.
Yeah, actually, the only difference
Other than Joe Biden said,
Yes.
we're sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
we're
no.
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. We were pretty sure at the time that he was a fucking terrorist. Now that we found out that he's carrying water jugs and not fuel, we're sorry.
It's the-
That guy's a war criminal. Are you fucking kidding me? What is the difference between the drone records of Obama and George Bush and Donald Trump and what we're seeing right here? Nothing. There is no difference. There is no difference.
Nope.
All of the American presidents of my conscious life are war criminals.
Yes.
And they stand in the White House and scream and stomp their feet at men like fucking Vladimir Putin who are doing the same goddamn shit with more balls and less care in the world about what the fuck they're doing. There is no difference. This is propaganda. Joe Biden killed 10 people in Afghanistan with a fucking missile. They were all innocent. He killed children,
A whole
Whoops.
fucking family.
and no one was punished.
And all it was
No one.
oops. We didn't
no
mean
one.
to.
No one lost their job.
Yep.
No one was brought down in rank. Nothing. Nothing happened. There is no difference.
This is what people like Glenn Greenwald have been preaching about since the Obama years. This is like Abby Martin, formerly of RT, who had, you can't go to RT anymore. Thank
No,
God.
and now you can't even fucking watch
Yeah.
her on YouTube, apparently.
And because now she's going to be thought of as what did Hillary Clinton call Tulsi Gabbard? An asset,
a Russian
a
asset.
Russian asset. Yeah,
People are
they're
still calling
assets
her
now. Yeah. Because it totally makes sense because you can't control whether or not you're an asset,
Right.
but you can control whether or not you're I don't know the difference there between like a willing participant and then somebody that just happens to, while you're living your life, the way you're living it, the things you're saying happen to, in our opinion, be more advantageous towards somebody we view as an enemy.
Right.
And Glenn Greenwald has been all over this shit since the fucking Bush years. And there's a reason he lives in Brazil. We'll put it that way. He don't
It's-
live in America no more.
It is
And I
dark,
think
bro.
good reason, because he's probably afraid of being fucking Julian Assange.
Probably.
Or Edward Snowden.
Or
I mean-
what the guy, Seth Rich, fucking
Seth,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Seth Rich.
any member of these journalists who've shot themselves in the head twice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? So no, this is bullshit. This is propaganda to
Yep.
bait the American people into support for a war. 100%.
War crimes do not exist.
No. On that
All
note,
war is a crime. If you're gonna lay it down like that, war, no matter which way you slice it, is going to be a cold, bloody, terrible situation. Period. Full stop. The worst of humanity is going to come out, along with, side by side, the best of humanity. Nobody really talks about that much. Most of the otherworldly acts of bravery and humility always happen during wartime, right alongside that of the worst of humanity. But the war crimes that you hear about every day, if you're somebody that's plugged into this situation, it is propaganda. It is meant to get you emotionally, I don't know the right word here, but like angry at somebody like the Russians.
You get y'all wooed up.
Yeah, you got to get all whooped up. You got to get all frothy in the mouth and be ready to go fucking kill those guys. You know, we need to invade and stop these psychopaths. He's basically Hitler, by the way. But the concept of war crimes is created in whole cloth by the West.
Yeah.
And it is only seen through the eyes of the West. And anybody who does not see through that same exact lens, they're not going to see those things as war crimes. It's just war to them.
Right. We're existing in a time in which Vladimir Putin has already said that he considers our actions, our support and our actions in Ukraine war crimes, or not war, but acts of war.
Yeah,
right.
acts of war.
Which is what has opened up for him the willingness to attack some of these facilities. Right. Again, I'm not justifying it. I'm not going to continue to do this, but we're not justifying it. We're not supporting Russia. We're not necessarily even supporting Ukraine. We're supporting
common sense thinking.
I support in this conflict. The only people that I stand in support with is the sovereignty of the free people of Ukraine.
Yeah.
That is who I stand with. I support the liberty and sovereignty of the people of Ukraine.
Amen.
That is all. I do not support the United States government. I don't support the Ukrainian government. I don't support the Russian government. I don't support the EU, any of that shit. This is all wrong. This is all wrong. I support the people who are there fighting to save their lives, their families, and their home. That is all.
That's it.
That is all. So,
and I am glad.
I just say that because I don't want to continue to qualify like, we're not supporting Russia. That's it. I've been asked several times about this since all this started, and that's how I've answered every time. I stand in support of the sovereignty and liberty of the free people of Ukraine. That is all. When I say glory to Ukraine, glory to the Ukrainian people. That is what I mean.
Yep.
Those are the people that I support in this conflict.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to think about because I remember years ago watching. I'm a big fan of Anthony Bourdain. Should be no surprise to anybody on the podcast. Huge fan. He did a couple episodes over in Eastern Europe, and I'm going to have to do some work to find out which episode it was. But they did this thing where they looked at. He was in a nation bordering Russia, and I want to say it was Belarus. I could be wrong, but at night he'd be right on the border, basically, right? And there's this barbed wire setup along the border between this nation and Russia. And what would happen is there's this little town right on the border, and they would go to bed at night. And then when they woke up, the border would be another foot closer because the Russian troops would come in the middle of the night, pick it up, take a step, put it down, and then walk away. And they would do that every single night. And eventually, entire towns found themselves sovereign Russian citizens and not citizens of the former country.
Right. That's how you get with the
that's
Donetsk
how you
province
get
or whatever.
Yes, that's how you end up with Luhansk. I'm not even pretending, but the eastern provinces in Ukraine. Most days when I'm not on the podcast, I could say them because I listen to Noah Rothman say them like that every time, and he's a beast mode. But it's problematic because you can understand the need for help from Ukraine, right?
Yes.
I fully support more or less the West's involvement in getting them munitions and weapons and help if they can fight. I'm down with that because, again, glory to the sovereign people of Ukraine.
Right.
And a pox on Russia for trying to, infringe on another nation's sovereignty, man.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. For whatever reason. I don't care.
Whether it be Nazis or whatever the fuck the real reason is, nationalism, whatever the reason is.
Whatever. I mean, that's their shit. Property ownership is very important to us, right? The right to own property is very important to us. It's liberty centered, I believe. And I believe you can make that argument over in Ukraine. The Ukrainian people should, at least as a nation, should have sovereignty over their own shit. I don't care how the lines were drawn, but we didn't draw the lines. I don't care. We are in a world now where lines are drawn and we all have property corners as nations. If you want to exchange those, we could talk about that. Let's draw up some agreements. The minute you start invading people, you're throwing all that away, and now you are infringing on somebody else's property rights, in my mind, and that's a serious issue with me. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can also make the argument that if the entirety of the Western nations are funneling money and weapons into a single proxy war, when Vladimir Putin says those are acts of war, I don't disagree with him.
Right.
What else is it other than It's like it's not a hot war. It's not a cold war. It's a real fucking. It's simmering.
Yeah.
It's simmering.
It's American exceptionalism. It's just it's fine.
Yeah,
Like, no, we're fine.
It's not a big deal.
We're not doing it because
No,
we're
we're
doing
just
we're
giving
doing
them
what's
weapons.
morally right.
Yeah.
We're just doing what's morally right. You know. So I want to talk about the Axios podcast for a minute, right? And this is the one. It's from the 18th.
Yep.
It is called "Does Biden Need a New Putin Playbook?" If you want to go and listen, the interview starts just the very first thing, so it's like a minute in, right?
Yep. Yeah, after a minute of ads
Yes.
for
Also,
a 15-minute podcast.
Let's take a second, right? Because the same day that I wrote Axios Wants War, I also realized that their number one contributor is Morgan Stanley. So
Yes.
your number one contributor is one of the biggest banks, financial institutions in the United States.
Which means in the world.
You're telling me that you don't have any financial interest in us going to war. Morgan Stanley doesn't hold any dealings with any defense companies or any energy companies or agricultural companies. They don't deal any money in that at all. You're not making any money if we go to war at all, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yep.
Even though Morgan Stanley is your middle ad and also your ending ad,
Interesting.
but you're not making any money off it, right? You don't have any interest in us being actively involved in warfare in Europe, right? Not at all.
Not directly. No.
No.
Not directly.
No. No, we get paid by Axios, and Morgan
Yeah.
Stanley just pays ads for us. We just pay for ads.
Yeah.
You know, it's no big deal. They definitely don't send us a letter indicating how they feel about certain issues, you know? Never.
Yeah. That's not why things like hedge funds and shell
No.
corporations exist. No.
I'm sure that they,
You just
know,
invest in a hedge fund, and they're the ones that make money off of Raytheon and
Right.
Boeing when we go to war. It's not, and then you just happen to profit off that. It's not that you are directly supporting war and you have zero interest in
Right.
lobbying for it. No. It's just it's these other bad people.
the
Like
same deal with ABC Start here. They are running ads for a company that they're saying handles trillions of dollars worth of investments.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that you're going to gain from this is what you're saying. You are directly going to gain from pushing the propaganda that you are pushing on a daily basis
Yes.
during the week is what you're saying.
And I want to take a quick second to just
Yes.
add this caveat because we have been especially talking about these podcasts a lot, like the Start Here podcast. Now we're talking about Axios. Just because it's a podcast doesn't mean it is alternative media. It doesn't mean it's new media.
No.
This is corporate legacy press
Yes.
trying to weasel in on our territory in the internet space. These people are corporate shills who owe nothing more than allegiance to the government and to the almighty dollar. That's it.
Yes.
So I just needed to make sure that we caveat that stuff because it's no different. Listening to the Axio podcast is no different than watching CNN. It's just a different
100%,
type.
100%. So on this podcast, right, they are making the claim, questioning, is this really about defining what a hostile act is, or is it about defining what, let me restart. Is this about defining what a hostile act is, what offense or defense is, or is this about fundamentally having to protect the world from a biological, chemical, or nuclear attack? What?
Wait, what are you talking about?
Our involvement.
Why did you bring up chemical weapons? What are we talking about here?
Is it? I don't.
Did we
but-
find some factories?
But are we really talking about what's offense and what's defense, or should we really be framing the conversation as, should we need to protect Europe from the potentially biological, chemical, or nuclear attack? What are we really talking about? Isn't that fundamentally what we're talking about?
Yeah, I feel
That's what she said. Or is this about fundamentally having to protect the world from a biological, chemical, or nuclear attack?
That
Isn't
is
that
so insane.
Isn't that fundamentally what all of this
Because
is about?
This means either you are in defense of, I don't even know where you begin with the other one, or are you in defense of Russians start nuclear war?
Yep.
That's what we have two
Fundamentally.
options. Do you want nuclear Armageddon brought to you by Vladimir Putin, or do you want defense of people and this justification for starting World War III?
Fundamentally, isn't that really what we're talking about?
Fundamentally, it is.
Yeah. They're also saying that Biden can't get too far ahead of Congress or the EU, but public sentiment is shifting, towards increased involvement of American troops or of American military in the Ukraine. They're saying, why does And I'm going to stop there because I'm going to pause there because I want him to hear the rest of this. And it was after this first part about biological, chemical, nuclear attacks that I wrote, they want war. This is war. They're talking about redefining what is and is now, what is offensive and what is defensive. What are you talking about? There are defensive weapons and there are offensive weapons. It's pretty cut and dry. Are you defending yourself or are you attacking first? It's pretty cut and dry. One of the next things that they said was, again, that Biden can't get too far ahead of Congress or the EU, but public sentiment is shifting towards more increased American involvement. They said, why does Putin get to define what an active war is? I don't know, because he's on the other side of the goddamn conflict?
Yes.
Because he's the other person that's involved in this fighting here. His definition of a war crime and an active war, maybe matters a little bit. Because if you don't think you're at war, but the other person does, that's going to shift the paradigm of what's happening.
Yes.
It matters how they are interpreting what is happening. That matters.
And that problem is, I think, a lot bigger than, I don't know, I don't want to say the West is realizing, but like at least the elite power centers in the West, I don't think they realize that Vladimir Putin might feel like the entire world is at war with him other than his few allies. Because when you look at the dollar amount, you look at on paper, you're at war, dude.
Yeah.
And I don't care if your legislative body has gotten together and went ahead and declared war on a nationals. I think we've had this before. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. We're going to start World War III, and no one's ever going to go to war again.
We never declared war in Afghanistan.
No, but
we call it forever
20
war,
fucking years.
and we call it a forever war,
Yes.
but we never declared war there.
That's right. And right now, to Vladimir Putin, World War III it's in full swing.
It's commenced.
It has begun. I have argued that same point, I believe.
Last week, that was the let me ask you this.
That's
Are
right.
we at war?
Yup. This drives me nuts.
Yeah.
It feels like gaslighting, but like if you cranked it up to 11 instead of like 10.
Oh,
I don't know. Like it's so insane.
Oh, no. Let me add to it because the next thing they said, the next thing I wrote down is can't a no-fly zone be, we've talked about no-fly zone, right? A no-fly zone, that's war. Because
That's war.
you have to enforce it. There has to be some, whether it's Americans, Poland, someone has to be in the skies to enforce the no-fly zone if it's going to be there.
Yeah.
So in the
Once
vein,
you slipped over to the demand side of war, it commences.
in the vein of redefining what is offense and what is defense, can a no-fly zone be a way to defend a humanitarian pathway out of the country?
It certainly could.
So it's only a no-fly zone just over just this road. Just this strip of
just
road
the
is
route.
the only no-fly zone.
Yep.
And if you fly a plane over it, then you're fucked.
Yeah. You're just going to need some surveyors to come in there and mark out where that
Right,
exact
right,
property
right.
line is.
Right.
That way we can know this corridor.
Can we
It's
just
safe.
redefine what a no-fly zone is so that it's really defensive and not offensive and that it's only, just this small part. So if Russia does come in, then they're definitely violating it. It's not an accident. Fuck you. This is propaganda. This is propaganda to shift Americans towards war.
Yeah. How is this any different than General Cornwallis talking to Mel Gibson saying like we don't shoot officers during wartime, all right? What is the fucking difference here? Nothing other than perspective. You're not going to convince Vladimir Putin that he is in the wrong here, man. You're just not. You need to find a way to end it. And the more you dick the dog on this one and you kick the can down the road and you fuck around with it, there's a reason we're here now. Because we didn't handle this 20 years ago. There's a reason. We're not going to get into that. That's a whole other conversation for another day. But there's a reason we're here now. Pretending that you don't have to do something to stop this is insane. You have to do something. And the more withdrawn you try to act, the more hands-off you try to be at this point, gets us closer and closer and closer. I need to rephrase this. We're running out of options.
Yes.
The longer we wait, the less options we have to avert a world goddamn war
We're
here.
damn near tapped right now. There's
Yes.
with the amount of sanctions and everything that we've
I
done.
don't know what's going to stop it
No,
at this
and
point.
I can't say for certain because I don't work in the government. I don't know exactly what all of the bars and we know what all the levers are.
Mm-hmm.
We are damn near tapped on non-military options in intervening with Russia. If they, again, I'm not going to qualify anymore. I'm done doing that shit. If Russia is able to form an alliance, a stronger, more involved alliance with other countries, these sanctions will not matter.
No.
They will not matter at all. They don't need their entire 7% brought back. They need their country to sustain the next few years until they figure out whatever happens next.
Yes.
They don't need to replace the 7%, especially Vladimir Putin. He don't give a shit.
He don't give two shits.
He needs the Kremlin to operate for the next few years.
Yes.
That's what he needs. And he needs a certain amount of the population to be comfortable for that to happen because shit goes bad in Russia. But if he can hold down the Kremlin, if he can hold down the capital of Moscow, and he can hold down his military fronts around the world, that is all that fucking matters to him.
Yep.
In the end goal of whatever his final goal is, I got no goddamn idea. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Can I quell the rebellions here, and can I maintain the fighting over there? That is what matters.
And in my opinion, when we talk about the Chinese-Russian relation,
Yes.
The Russo, I can't remember what they used to call it back in the day. But anyways, Russian-China relations. The United States is we're going to hurt when we cut off trade with Russia. Obviously.
With China or with
I have a
Russia?
video from Jen Psaki telling me that Vladimir Putin is responsible for our high gas prices.
Biden, too, when he gets asked
Yes.
about it, he says, not much I can do right now.
Yep.
Vladimir Putin's fault.
Exactly.
Bitch, what?
Putin did it.
It's
So-
Vladimir Putin's fault.
Yeah.
It's the Putin gas hike. What the fuck?
Amen.
What the fuck?
Now, with that being said, we can do that and be okay. We can cut off Russia from international trade, and it'll hurt, but we can survive, right? It's a thing. Right now we're looking at massive food shortage, possibly in the future, because who makes most of the world's fertilizer? Russia does, and then we have our gas energy problem with them, which is something that I think we can collectively as a Western culture survive. Not that worried about it. But you know what we can't get cut off of? China. China makes everything. We found that out during the pandemic. There is not going to be a trade embargo with China. There's not going to be a problem trading with China. So,
It would fuck China as well, just to put that in there. It's not like it would only fuck us, because China also makes shit for the rest of the world. If no one's buying anything from them, they're not making very much money.
Yep. But when it comes time to draw the lines in teams, right?
Yes.
If this was World War III teams,
Which are being drawn.
Yep, which are being drawn. We are talking about Russia and China and Iran and possibly India, which would be a fucking game changer.
Especially because they've been warring with China on their borders for like the last 2 or 3 years.
Yes,
They've
and
been
like
ramped up over the last 2 or 3 years.
Weird shit too.
They're with like
weird stuff,
clubs
rocks
and
and
shit,
shit.
yes.
Yeah, because the minute you
Barbed
fire a gun,
wire
things
batons.
become more real. But go beat each other to death down by a river, nobody cares.
literal gangs of dudes. Yeah,
It's
literal
fucking weird,
gangs of
dude.
dudes beating each other to death with clubs and barbed wire bats and rocks and shit because they can't have military warfare, like you said.
Yeah, in
That is
modern
fucking-
day military fatigues,
They're
you
wearing,
can watch
like,
them on YouTube
Wearing
right
bulletproof
now.
vests.
It's
They're
weird as
wearing
shit.
body armor and they're getting hit with clubs.
So, sorry to bring it back to the serious notion. We have kind of a similarly mutually assured destruction between China and the United States as far as
economic
trade is
one,
going.
yeah.
Exactly, right? But I don't know if China would hurt as bad as the United States if we blew off, because they have other trade partners that have lots of money, generally funded by the United States, by the way. But if it's
the
aside,
U.S. and Europe, because it's not just the U.S. It's
Yes.
the U.S., the EU, whoever the fuck else is going to jump on with that if it starts to
Yes.
come down to that.
and then we
right?
look at the Belt and Road Initiative and how many African nations that do a lot of diamond exporting and mining and things like it, precious metals, things like that. They're going to fund green energy, all that shit.
And
it's all
your
going
fucking
through
cell
China.
phone. Yeah, everyone in
Amen.
America loves iPhones.
Yes,
You
and-
pay $1,000 for it. Will you pay $5,000 for it?
Yep. Nope. Because guess what? You can't afford it now
Yeah.
because our fucking currency is shit. And if the entire world quits trading dollars for the petrodollar, buying oil and selling oil in dollars, our currency is shit. And now without the embargo, your cell phone is now $5,000. That's just inflation alone.
And we
now
owe our money to China.
Yes. So that being said, China and Russia team up, obviously. Let's put it this way. If China had to sever its trade relationship fully with the United States, Russia would have a problem. Because economically, you have these world banks and this new world order and shit where he owes money to these people and they have to do that, otherwise default on a loan. And then there's World War III anytime. But right now, if Russia can do all of its trade with China in China's currency, China does enough business with the U.S. and the rest of the world in dollars that it can easily funnel the dollars Russia needs to Russia in the exchange to make sure they don't default on their debt. So that, again, this is propaganda you hear about Russia defaulting on its loans and blah, blah. It's not going to happen because China's not going to let it happen.
Like,
because China owns more debt than we make in GDP.
Yes.
They own more of our dollars in debt. We owe them more money. They're going to get those dollars to Russia if they need it. They're not going to allow...
Whether we like it or not.
Yes. They're not going to allow their World War III trading partner to get cut off like that. No. It's not going to happen.
They're going to put their hand out and say...
Yeah. Here.
Money, bitch.
Do it.
Where's the dollars?
Yes. This is why I don't...
Literally, dollars.
All I do is see that argument about Russia defaulting on their loans as propaganda. Because that's all it is. It's not real. China will get around it.
All this is propaganda.
Amen. I'm doing good at like hammering topics to propaganda this week.
Because all of this is propaganda. Right. One of the last things, this is the last thing I have on this card, is we talked about the Zelensky virtual tour, right? Mm-hmm. He went to the EU and Lonesome Lenny.
Lenny's here.
We're talking about Ukraine, Lenny. We're out here. So Zelensky made his speech. He did one in the EU. He did one in Canada. He did one in America. All to his credit. All historically accurate for whatever he was talking about, right? So he's an entertainer. He's an actor. He's a public speaker. He knows what he's doing, right? So when he's here, he's talking about 9/11, talking about Pearl Harbor, evoking the emotions of the American people.
Half in Ukraine, half in English.
He plays, exactly. He speaks in English. He plays a video of the destruction and violence that's happening there,
Rough video, by the way.
So
I try not to cry.
I did not watch it. I've not watched the speech. I just had so much fucking content that I was trying to get through. I got the gist of it in what I was listening to, and that's
all just propaganda.
And that's what I needed to do this show.
Yep.
So I will, candidly, I have not watched the Zelensky speech. I've heard clips from the 90 fucking shows that I watch every day.
Yeah, you don't need to.
But one of the last things they brought up was Zelensky's address to Congress, right? And they said, and I paid very close attention to this, so I guarantee you this is what happened. They said that Zelensky challenged Putin when he asked him to be the leader of the world. They did not include the part where he said, and the leader of the world means being a leader of peace.
Now, you said Putin. You mean Biden?
Yes, I did. I wrote down Putin, but he did say Biden. Yes, when Zelensky challenged Biden to be the leader of the world.
Yeah.
That's all they said.
The leader of peace.
Conveniently left that part out. Conveniently left that part out when Zelensky said, and being the leader of the world means being the leader of peace.
Yeah.
Conveniently left that part out.
Interesting. Because so just in perspectives, I got the raw deal where I heard that and then I heard the leader of, it's in the same fucking sentence.
Yep.
And now you, as somebody that did not watch that right away, are getting fed by the media something that tells a complete and utter
completely different story.
They are selling you propaganda versus getting it from. It means two different things.
Conveniently left out the part where he said being the leader of the world means being the leader of peace.
That is
conveniently left that part out. And then ran an ad for Morgan Stanley. What are we doing? What is going on here? So
I love it. There's just shameless shilling, man. Shameless war shilling.
Yes. One of the things I want to hit on is you said that Putin is worse than Hitler, right? We've heard that Putin is Hitler now.
Yeah. It's a point of view from that. I don't want to have you put that in my words, but
no.
Like, it is. I was speaking for others.
You referenced earlier.
Indeed,
yes, I should correct myself. You referenced earlier.
I'm not going down for this one, bro.
No, that people are claiming that Putin is Hitler. We heard this week, I don't remember the man's name, but there's a clip that we can find if we really want to, who worked in the Obama administration, who said that Putin was actually worse than Hitler because Hitler didn't kill ethnic Germans.
Wow.
Yes. Not only is that
that's a whole nother level
shit I've ever heard, It's a lie. It's
Yeah,
a lie, and it's
a total lie.
propaganda.
Yes.
Okay, because there was no German Jews at all, right?
Not
there
at
was
all.
no there was no gay Germans, there was no fucking
Yeah,
black
yeah.
Germans, there was no Germans that ended up in a camp ever, or shot on the street, or hung up, or any of that shit. Never. He would never do that because Putin is worse than Hitler. This is to invoke, and I'm gonna break it down when you're finding this, right? This is to invoke. In World War II, we had no choice but to be involved. Even fucking though, when we got involved in World War II, we didn't know about the camps. No one knew about the camps when we went over there. We discovered the camps when we were over there. As we were liberating people, we discovered the camps.
Towards the end of the war.
We did not know.
There was a really good episode on that about that on Band of Brothers.
Yes.
Fought the whole fucking war.
Yes.
Had no idea this was happening until they got there.
This is to invoke the war crimes, the humanitarian struggles, the torture that Putin is putting these people through. He's worse than Hitler. He's killing his own people. He's killing his own supporters.
I'm trying to find it. There's too many.
This is propaganda.
Putin is worse than Hitler. Ukrainians vent their fury as families. They see that's not right.
Putin or Hitler didn't kill ethnic Germans. If you Google that, then we'll find that clip. This is propaganda. This is propaganda. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This man who worked in the Obama administration is telling you, and that's not like fuck Obama. That's just to say that he worked in the government, right? Just that he held an official position in the government.
MSNBC deletes Michael McFlaw's comment that Hitler didn't kill, quote, ethnic Germans. I guarantee you he was somehow or other involved in the Obama White House. I'm just going to do a little read. MSNBC propped up and then scrubbed former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFowle's false suggestion on Friday that Adolf Hitler did not order the deaths of, quote, ethnic Germans during the Holocaust while he condemned Russian President Vladimir Putin's actions in Ukraine. Good Lord.
He was the ambassador to Russia.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
And then
he's put on MSNBC to be held up as, look at how legitimate he is. He was the ambassador to Russia. If anyone knows about Russia, it's this fucking guy because he was the ambassador during Obama.
Yep.
We love Obama. Obama's the best. Look at this. He's telling you Putin's worse than Hitler.
Okay. So in his defense, he was on a Rachel Maddow show when he said it.
Oh, fuck him.
So,
well, fuck him twice then.
Yeah. I got to toe the line here. Otherwise, they're not going to let me back on next week because now she's down to doing once a week from what I hear.
No. And let me be as objective as possible. He was quoting someone from a Ukrainian television show that he had done earlier. That does not excuse you from presenting that as your point and defending it. That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard from somebody who was once an ambassador to the country that they are now shitting on.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
That's crazy.
And then he's tweeting about it, and he's like, I didn't, thank you to the people who commented and informed me that I was wrong about the killing of ethnic Germans. Thank you for people who've sent in reading recommendations.
Here we go. This is from I didn't realize what website I pulled up until just now.
What is it?
It's the Daily Beast.
I love it.
That's how you know it's good. He said right there, quote, I slipped late last night and violated an unwritten taboo. Never compare Hitler to anyone, quote. He tweeted, quote, I agree. He was uncomparably evil. I won't do it again. So he made a really, really bad Twitter apology is what I'm hearing.
Yep, and then thanked people for sending in reading
wow.
materials.
What a piece of shit. You low level.
If you have gone through high school history,
yeah,
you know that Hitler killed ethnic Germans.
Bro.
Are you fucking kidding me? And why are you going to restate the point from a Russian propagandist?
Right?
He was quoting someone from Russia who's like, well, at least, Vladimir Putin never killed. Yeah, you got to be joking me.
Do not put me in a position to defend this man.
It is inexcusable.
Do not. It is so bad. These people, how do you put yourself in a position where anybody that's willing to do a 5-minute Google search, even you don't even have to go to DuckDuckGo to find this shit out. You just go to Google. Spend 5 minutes on Google, and you can find that the arguments these people are making are so disingenuous and false. next thing you know, you find yourself apologizing for bad arguments against Vladimir Putin, for real life arguments against him.
Yeah.
But they're not making those arguments, which is the problem. But
The last point that I want to hit, and then we can move on to our next part, is about
so far you've done good. I only have 2 things on my list we haven't hit yet.
excellent. So, and there's I have on here that we could talk about oil and stuff if we have time. I think that's it's kind of a large topic.
If we have time.
So I have that here. It's a very large topic because there's history of
There's a
and
lot.
we talked about it last week that I don't think that it begs that much. If you're watching this show, then you are not a fucking idiot, and you know that the Putin gas hike and all this shit, it's nonsense.
It's not real.
We've been watching gas prices go up for over a year now, right?
I think we both agreed
Yes.
a little while ago that if for some reason all trade with Russia was completely cut off tomorrow, we'd have a black eye, but we'd be fine. The vast majority of that is oil and energy.
And we can take a deep dive at some point and talk about, we talked a little bit about the oil war last time. We talked a little bit about the refineries that had gone under. There's a lot going on with people who invested in oil and lost out on their investments when these things happened, and now they're requesting the profits from the oil companies, and so the oil companies, whether it's the right thing or not, I'm not defending them, are not reinvesting their profits to lower gas prices or to drill more. They're staying stagnant because for multiple reasons they're afraid they're not going to survive, and the people who already invested money want their money back before they don't survive.
Yeah.
So
There's been very little conversation around the conversations regarding energy cost, oil.
Right.
There's very little talk with OPEC
yeah.
and the international cartel of oil purchasing nations, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So we should.
So that's a problem because they still have sway over these things.
The next time we're here, if all this is still going on, we should consider having a deep dive, or maybe we'll do an impromptu live or something like that, a double header style thing where we can talk about. We'll figure something out because it's important to understand, and it's too big to go into now, that the long and short of the oil thing is it's way deeper than Vladimir Putin.
Way
This is not
deeper.
just about what's happening in Russia. It involves, like you said, OPEC. It involves oil investments here, the hostility towards the oil industry from the Biden administration. There are many, many, many elements to this that are being distilled in a disgusting way down to be able to blame Vladimir Putin in again a renewed effort to spin propaganda to turn people against what is going on here and increase American support for military involvement in the Ukraine.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was something that we should do a deep dive in until we're sitting here talking about it. So
Right.
I think that's a great idea.
Just because it's so
We'll
involved.
come up with some kind of thing because the context matters,
Right.
Because of the arguments being used from, unfortunately, our side of the conflict.
Yeah.
Blaming everything on like Vladimir Putin. It's so much bigger than that. But
We should sit down. You get back. I don't know, like a
Like
middle,
the 6th,
middle of the week.
yeah.
So maybe we should try and sit down and just do a short live like that Friday or Saturday.
it would not suck.
And just have a few beers, have just an
Yeah.
open
We'll be
conversation.
gone for 2 weeks. We're gonna have to see each other.
Exactly. Just have an open conversation that we can just kind of flow about the different aspects of the oil industry and what's going on. I think that would be a good way to do that because I want people to know that information, but we don't have the time for it today.
We just went over our schedule in part 1.
Right.
Monday through Friday is booked right now.
So the chemical weapons thing, right? There's
Yes.
been lots of discussions. There
Another one off my
was
list.
some biological research facilities in Ukraine that were discovered, the existence of which was brought up in a House hearing this week. Oil was $30 a barrel less and gas prices remain the same. I'm telling you, it's deep.
yeah.
It is deep. Yeah. And so
much of it is
will get into that.
set on speculation and shit.
yes,
But yeah.
we will get into that. I promise. So there were biological research facilities found in Ukraine. There was a lot of hullabaloo about this, but they have biological weapons. They have this. They have this. There's no
I was going to say, up until just then,
right.
there was one word you didn't say, and that was weapon.
Right.
It was biological research facilities.
Yeah, and
level
they're-
2. Oh, I don't mean the biological protections status or whatever. Like the Wuhan lab, biological
4.
level 4.
Yeah.
These were only level 2s.
And so there isn't evidence thus far that there were weapons there. There also isn't evidence that there aren't biological weapons there because that's how man works, right?
And also,
that's
you
what we
don't
do
know
with
what
things.
you don't know.
Right. So Marco Rubio brought this up in a congressional hearing in which he
Piece
thought
of
he was
shit.
going to get a much simpler answer, and then he quickly tried to turn it to other things, in which the woman that he was talking to said, "Oh, there's definitely facilities there, and we're definitely concerned that Russia is going to find them." And so that exploded right into a discussion like you talked about chemical weapons attacks.
Well,
And
in defense of the explosion,
yes,
the next line out of Rubio's mouth was,
Yes.
"So I'm running out of time here. So let me ask you this: if there is a biological weapons attack or a chemical weapons attack in Ukraine, would you have any doubt whatsoever that Russia would be behind it?" And she says, "No." What the? We're not talking about
propaganda.
biological weapons, you fucking warmonger.
yeah, it's propaganda. It's all propaganda. No.
I'm
No, that's
usually
important.
a fan of Rubio in many aspects. This, not so much. You piece of shit. Why don't you go fight? How about that? Let's sign you up to the Ukrainian battalion tomorrow.
Right.
Piece of shit.
So after that's very
Make that
important.
fucking
No,
jump.
Very important. So after that happens, right? Like you said, it explodes. There are
Everywhere.
Russia is then saying America is going to use chemical weapons, or Ukraine is going to. They said Ukraine is going to use. Let me correct myself. They said Ukraine is going to use chemical weapons and say that it's us. They're going to launch a false flag and say that it's us. America then says, right? That's how this.
Just Ukraine would use chemical weapons and then say that it was us.
That it was Russia.
Russia.
That
Russia.
it was Russia.
Okay.
Russia
is saying that.
That Ukraine is going to use
Yes.
chemical weapons, biological weapons, and then blame us.
Yeah. So
right?
they're
Blame
saying
Russia.
Yeah. So people are
As a
setting
false
up
flag.
multiple false flag scenarios
Yes.
now with these unconfirmed chemical or biological weapons that may or may not exist at all.
Yes.
Okay.
The United States then says, and I'm going to send you this article.
Yee.
The United States then says, well, this is a classic Russian trick that because they're saying that we're going to do it, they're almost definitely going to do it and then blame us.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
If they said it, that means that they're going to say we did it.
Their justification for this is, well, this is what they did in Syria, right? In Syria, they launched chemical weapons, and then they said that it was us.
The gray
Or they
zone.
said that we were going to, the reporter is what matters. The outlet is not necessarily.
Aaron
it's Aaron
Matei.
Matei. Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
this is the guy that was on Jimmy Dore. This is the reporting that he did that they were talking about, the clip that I sent
Yeah.
you, right? So
No, I usually like his reporting.
yes. So this is just, I think, just where he was working at the time. So like I
Independent
said,
journalists, they got to work everywhere, baby.
exactly. Yeah. So I wasn't
Yep.
going to give credence or take away from that because his reporting is what I trust, right? So this article,
2020. Wow.
this
goes
article
back.
is about the OPCW Syria whistleblower and ex-director attacked by U.S., UK, and France, right? There were whistleblowers out of the OPCW, which is a chemical weapons watchdog, right?
Okay.
The whistleblower from there, when he's investigating the chemical weapons attack in Syria. Let me provide a little bit more context, right?
This was a while ago.
Yes, long time ago, before we were doing the show. According to the United States, this was 2018, I believe, that these chemical weapons attacks happened, or that we said that they happened, right?
This is just because I think the reference to taking down of Tulsi Gabbard's legitimacy for her involvement with talking to Syrian President Assad,
Yeah.
about this was the last time this was really in the news.
Yes.
Was during the debate. So that's what this is in context to.
So in 2018, Donald Trump launched a shitload of missiles at Syria because it said there were chemical weapons attacks that happened there. Right?
A lot of missiles.
It is then found out, quote unquote, that the Russians are the ones that really use the chemical weapons, right? That's what the Americans said. That's what the OPCW apparently said. You know, that was the main story, is that Russia is actually the ones that deployed the chemical weapons. They dropped canisters from planes. They exploded. It's horrible. There's a CNN reporter there who smells the canister of a chemical weapon, sarin gas, chlorine gas. She smells it and says, oh, there's definitely something that stings the nostrils in it. Oh, maybe it's the chlorine gas, you dumb person. She would die, okay?
Yes, you would.
So it's the mainstream perspective that it is actually Russia that launched these chemical weapons.
Yep.
There are then...
And that's what got Tulsi hemmed.
Yes, there are then whistleblowers that come out that say, actually, 2 of these 4 canisters weren't even dropped out of an airplane. Right? There's no evidence of that. There actually isn't chlorine or sarin gas evidence of those things in here. Right? We then find out, again, from the reporting of Aaron Matei, this one is just about the whistleblower and his interactions with the United States and these people in the UN, right, when he's testifying there. So there is much more reporting that goes behind this. This is just the story I pulled to just kind of give context to it, right? We then find out that actually these chemical weapons were launched by militias in the area that are backed by the United States, Yes. So we found out, we knew that these militias had a chemical weapons manufacturing facility that they were operating through. We knew about that, continued to fund them, and then gave them the green light, maybe with or without acknowledgement, gave them the green light to use these chemical weapons, and then immediately turned and said, oh, but it was Russia.
It's almost like we're getting real good at false flags these days.
So I'm like almost getting emotional. I'm so frustrated. It's literally the same thing that is happening right now. And they're going to use chemical weapons on people in fucking Ukraine. There is a civil war happening in Yemen, and we are giving fraction of the amount that we are funding.
Yep.
We are also providing humanitarian aid to fix what we are fucking up at the same time. Our government is going to fund people to use chemical weapons against innocent civilians and blame it on the Russians to send our sons and daughters to die in Europe. This is dark. This is some of the darkest shit I have ever seen. There's evidence of it on the fucking screen right now. This is happening. There is no denying it. They have done it before, and they're going to do it again. And they're lying to you about it right now.
Yep. And I can understand you being emotional about it because it's a travesty. It's a travesty, and it is something that they have been doing now for, I mean, I don't know how long it's been happening, but it's been greater than our lifetime, and it's fortunate now. Journalism is dead. That's what Lonesome Lenny says.
100%.
Hey, fucking men, dude, it definitely is. This is, I swear, man, I read Kitsap Sun as often as they allow me to for free. And
6 times a month?
yeah, something like that. It's not that much. But this is something I'm going to put this in right now. I've got it written down. We're going to talk about this during our Patreon exclusive 5 of 4 today. We're going to talk about free press and the paywall press. We're going to talk about that a little bit because I want to have some of those discussions. But yeah, this is the same narrative that has been happening since the Cold War began.
Yes.
This is the same deal, except now this is the first time that the corporate press doesn't have the upper hand. We can see farther than they can see. We have been looking through the telescopic lens of mainstream press, the corporate press, for decades at this point. And this is the very first time in history where the plebs, the populace as a whole, can actually, without investing a ton of money, they actually have an opportunity to see around the lens that we've been forced to look through for the very first time, and we're seeing these things happen. And it can be emotionally devastating to realize that, like, at the same time, we are making money selling Ukrainians weapons. But we're going to make a hell of a lot more money if we commit a false flag and actually get the rest of the world involved in this joint. Then profits going to soar, baby.
People
and
have
then
to pay us for weapons and for materials.
How else is the United States going to remain the hegemonic superpower of the entire world unless we can get everybody to go to war with each other again and rely once again only on us and our almighty dollar? If we don't, it's the only commodity the United States has anymore that's worth a damn. IP doesn't matter because China can steal it. We make really good weapons, and our dollar, we make such good weapons that if you don't use our dollar, we'll take over your country, or we'll have somebody else take over your country. So you better take our dollar, because our other mainstream trade good is the U.S. dollar as a currency.
Dollars and war. Those are the two things that we can export en masse.
And when the sanctity of the dollar on a global stage is threatened, that's when the United States will go to war. It's because we cannot afford to lose out on that. If we are not the mainstream international currency anymore, we don't have a country anymore. It's over. All of the division that's been seeded over the last we'll go ahead and say 30 years just to play it safe. All of that's going to come up. It's going to boil up. And the global conflict that's happening is not going to matter, because they have officially taken the United States off the chessboard, because we're going to turn amongst each other and then it's over. We're not going to be participating in World War III because we'll be fighting Civil War 2.0.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, we
anyways.
think we're close now.
Yeah, wait until we go to war. And then it's really going to happen. And then we're not really going to be at war anymore because we'll be at war here. Fuck, man, you said it was going to get dark. It got dark real quick.
Yep. Yeah, and the next topic is not a whole lot better.
No, it's not.
I think that's the last.
I had one
Let's hear
point
it.
from the very beginning of the timeline. We were talking about the MiG situation,
Yes,
the fighter
the
jet
jets.
situation, and why that is not going to be a thing, and why
Right.
that will be the catalyst to kick off World War III, and that's why we avoided it. The MiGs, one way or t'other, you need to fly them into Ukraine.
Someone has to.
Someone has to, ideally, right?
To take them on a train would be stupid.
You'd have to come up with a whole new airplane, I'm pretty sure, to be able to design to throw in the back of a plane. We don't have time nor resources to do that. The fucking MiG, whatever it is, MiG-22, MiG-35, I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
The MiGs aren't designed to have, they're not designed to do that, period. It's a Russian aircraft. The complexity of the weapons is something else you brought up.
Yes.
So we can't get MiGs in. We can't get MiGs into Ukraine. We have to get MiGs in because the alternative is to say send them F-35s, F-22s, F-A-18s, something American made. We can't do that because the Ukrainians are not trained on those platforms, and they are much more complex. They're much more computer focused and all this stuff. It's not so much that
We make shit fancy out here.
Yeah, the Ukrainians aren't dumb. They're not too dumb to use our weapons.
They're
It's
just
just
not
they're not
trained
trained
on
on them, so we can't send it to them. So we rely on the Russian-made MiG.
Yeah.
Now, we can't get the MiGs in because you'd have to fly them in at some point. Somebody has to fly them.
We are going
And
to send
it's
the
going
Americans
to
do
be,
it.
and it doesn't matter if it's the Americans or not, which is the problem. The Polish can't do it. Why? Because they're a NATO power. The Estonians can't do it. Why? Because they're a NATO power. Go down the list.
Right.
You cannot get them into Ukraine because Vladimir Putin has said any violation of the airspace from a NATO power, this is a territory in dispute.
Yeah.
That will trigger World War III. You cannot fly the MiGs into Ukraine, period, without kicking off full-blown war. And at this point, I don't know. We're just kicking the can down the road here at some point. World War III is already upon us. The entire world
But the government
has
said,
an interest. But the government said the entire world has an interest in what's going on right now. All the major powers are funneling money and power one way or the other into this single war.
yeah.
We're already at war, man. There's just we don't all have boots on the ground yet. Do you think it's inevitable?
We don't have public boots on the ground yet.
There you go. We don't have publicly known boots on the ground.
No,
yeah,
I like I said, I would bet every dollar I have that there are Green Beret or special forces of some variety on the ground right now as we speak.
Yep.
I know for certain, there are ex-special forces there. I know that for certain because I fucking follow them on the internet. I see the pictures they're posting. I see what they're doing. I know what their careers are, and I've seen what they're doing right now. So I know that there are Americans over there. Whether they are American active duty service members is a completely different discussion. Whether or not they're average Joes who walked off their couch, or they're people that are actual fucking operators at one point in time, is a completely different discussion. Lockheed Martin and Raytheon stocks are going up. Isn't that weird?
Amen.
So weird. I would never have expected that, Lenny. I'm surprised by that.
I'm surprised by that.
Fuck these people. It is horrible. It is horrible.
Oh, fuck, man. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm trying to figure out a way to end it on propaganda, bring it all the way back to propaganda, but it's all propaganda.
It's all propaganda.
It's all
They're
propaganda,
not talking
man.
about the Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are making money. They're talking to you about Putin raising your gas prices.
Yep.
They don't want you to talk about this. They're talking about how terrible Russia's economy is doing, and that Joe Biden is saving our economy.
Yep.
That we're listening to Pod Save America, and they're like, Joe Biden's just not getting the credit for what he's doing.
I could not believe.
If people only understood, they said. They really said that.
Yes.
If people only understood what really was happening, if you were only smart enough to get it, if you could only comprehend, but your brain is too small, you just don't understand what's really happening here.
No.
It was the most condescending shit I ever heard.
We're going to talk about PSA and commentary in
Number
part
4.
4. Okay, good. I
Yes.
need to save. I got to keep my powder dry for that one
Yep,
because I
hold on
was
to it.
fucking furious.
That
Why
was
did you?
just a-
Why did you make me go back to
It was
those
bad.
people?
It was bad. That was just to spin us out. I think we're going to call this the end of this part,
Yeah.
right? As everyone knows, Lenny, we're back in 3 minutes to the next one. I want to thank you again for watching us here on our youtube.com/saltofthestreets. We also have our Instagram.com, Salt of the Streets, Facebook, fuckfacebook.com/Salt of the Streets. You can find all this on saltofthestreets.com, including our Patreon, patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. You can go there, become a patron. You can help us make more, better content. We also have our newsletter that drops at the end of the month. We have the part 5 of 4 that drops at the end of this episode here. Excuse me, actually maybe tomorrow because we're having dinner tonight, but
Nah, it'll still be up tonight. I'm an OG, bro. Don't worry about
you
it.
guys are crazy. We have all those things going on. SaltofTheStreets.com. Find all this information. We also have Lexi Kyle on Twitch.
That's right.
Swell Blended if you need a haircut. Location Skate Shop if you need a
thanks, Lenny.
skateboard. Thank you very much, Lenny. And Leggings and Aprons if you need a cake. With that, we will be back. What are you looking for?
I was gonna say, do you have YouTube up too, or are you watching it on the big screen?
No, I'm watching it on that. No,
There we
I have,
go.
No, just a bunch of shit up on here. With that, we'll be back in 3 minutes.
And oh wait, no, I gotta hit the wrong button. Where is the button? I don't ever use my fucking thing.
Where is it?
All right, boom.
love
There
it.
we go. Timing. 3 minutes.
We'll be back.
We'll be back.
Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat everything.